Okay, Moshe sins by hitting the rock. All the Mefarshim here discuss basically two basic questions. Number one, what exactly was the sin? What was he told to do? What was the sin? And there are myriad different explanations. The other is, what was so wrong with hitting the rosh in the first place? Not so long ago, Parshas Beshalach, once again the Am complained they wanted water, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe explicitly, take a stick and go and hit the rock. What was good then apparently is no longer good now. What changed? So the Tziv developed a very, very important theme, which essentially is the theme of the whole of Sefer Bamidbar, that explains this week's parasha amongst many, many other details throughout the Sefer. The most important thing to understand here is that by Parashat Chukat, we're starting an entirely new section of Sefer Bamidbar. We just jumped 38 years. Parashat Chukat begins with the Paradumah, being Matar people from death, because that's all Klal Yisrael's really been doing for the last 38 years. There was a Gezerah with the Meraglim that this generation would die out over 40 years, and year in, year out, basically a whole generation has been dying out, and there's been a need to be Mataya. So basically, Paradumah is the experience of Klal Yisrael for 40 years, for 38 years. Also in this sixth parasha, Miriam and Aaron, the leaders of the generation, die. The death of Miriam was the cause, the reason why they didn't have any water, because with Miriam's death left the Be'er Miriam, and now Klal Yisrael once again needs water. In other words, what we're dealing here with is a new generation, and apparently what was true for the first generation, the ability to hit the rock, and that was appropriate for the first generation, was no longer relevant and right for the current generation, and they weren't supposed to hit the rock, but rather to speak to or in front of the rock. Why? What's going on? So the Netziv describes that there's a fundamental difference between life in the Midbar and life in Eretz Yisrael. In the Midbar, everything was miraculous. The food came, was the man that fell from heaven, the bracha motzi lechem min hashamayim. The water was a miraculous water from Be'er Miriam. The clothes didn't wear out, the shoes didn't wear out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was constantly looking after them. The battles were miraculous. But when they're going to go into Eretz Yisrael, suddenly life is going to be natural. The water source is going to be from rain. They're going to have to plant wheat and reap it and create bread. They're going to have to fight battles with using strategy and normal rules of war. And life is going to change dramatically from HaKadosh Baruch Hu openly displaying his miracles to Hashem, as it were, being somewhat hidden. The Torah warns us not to think that life is totally natural. It's not as if we're being subject to all the laws of nature and HaKadosh Baruch Hu has forsaken us. No. In Eretz Yisrael, Einei Hashem Elokecha ba mirishit shana ad acharit shana. Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha is present all the time. And like we read every day in the second parasha of Shema, that the success, the ability to get bracha through the natural processes, through rain and flourishing of agriculture, all comes based on our Torah mitzvot. But life will feel more natural. HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't be as openly, directly involved. Why? Why does that change come about? So I think the idea is very, very simple. Take the mashal of a parent-child relationship. When a child is very, very young, a baby, the baby's useless. He can't eat himself, he can't drink himself. The parent has to do everything for him. And even as the baby grows into a young toddler, still, the parent has to be present within that child's life all the time. The parent leaves the room, the baby suddenly gets very nervous. Where's my parent? Where are they? Where have they gone? There's a need for the parent to be directly involved at every single moment of that child's life in order to develop this sense of security, of realization of dependence and connection. And that's true in the nascent years of any person. That was also true of Am Yisrael, the first generation, as we left Egypt, and that's what was going on already in the first 38 years, was this nascent reality where we needed to see and feel Hashem's direct, open hands in our lives to realize to what extent Hashem cares about Am Yisrael and to what extent Hashem really provides every single need for Am Yisrael's success. But as a child grows older, there's a need for the relationship with the parent to mature. If when the child's 20, 25, 30, the parents are still treating him like he was 3 years old and calling him their baby and providing everything for him, then not only is that person going to be crushed as an individual in his ability to become more independent, but the relationship is going to remain a superficial child, baby-parent relationship. There's a need for maturity, and to give maturity, there needs to be some feeling, some sense of independence, where the child is able to grow up and start taking care of himself, being more independent, forging his own life, creating his own home. And it's the same with Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael has to move on from being this baby in the Midbar, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu does everything, to creating a nation that's not only dependent on Hashem, but is actually be able to represent Hashem. And if it's to represent Hashem, they have to have that independence to forge their identity within a godly setting. And therefore, in Eretz Yisrael, the battles aren't going to be all miraculous, and the water source is going to look more natural, and the bread is going to look more natural. We're still going to recognize it comes from Hashem, but through a sense of independence. What happens in this week's parsha is that jump from the previous generation to the new generation. Previous generation has almost entirely died out. The leaders, Moshe and Aaron, have died out, and now we're dealing with a new generation. And Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, no longer are you just going to do a magic trick. Take a stick, hit the rock, and water comes out. You're going to teach them the rules of the game change. Go in front of the rock and speak, daven, talk, use words. That's how life works now. You can daven to Hashem, take Divrei Torah, and through that more mature way of relating to the world, rather than just using force, but through talking, that's how you're going to be zoicher to have water. The problem was Moshe Rabbeinu apparently didn't think that was right. He saw in front of him a generation that felt they still needed the same lessons of the previous generations. By doing so, Moshe Rabbeinu demonstrated he was still a leader of the previous generation and didn't realize that the need to present new opportunities and new lessons to the new generation. And for that, he forfeits the right to be a leader. He demonstrates the leader of the old generation. He can't be the leader of a new generation. And that's why he loses his leadership. He missed that opportunity. And for that, he lost his opportunity to take the new generation into Eretz Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.